I have a girlfriend, so I'm heading home. Do whatever you want with the child. Mike's words cut through the room, followed by the sound of a young woman's laughter. This woman was Mike's affair partner. Of course you'll be with me, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. There's no need to compare me to such an old woman. Besides, I don't want a baby. They're just noisy and not cute at all with their wrinkled faces. Her callous words were a blow not only to me but to my daughter as well. My body trembled with rage, but I forced myself to take a deep breath and compose my thoughts. I'm done with both of you, I said, struggling to control my voice. It's too late for regrets now. Gathering what little strength I had left in my not fully recovered postpartum body, I stood up and fixed Mike with a piercing glare. Are you really okay with this? You and the child can just disappear, right? I needed his confirmation, even though I didn't want to talk to him at all. Yeah, look, Mike said, showing me the divorce papers and the birth certificate he had already signed. I've prepared everything. Please just fill out and submit the papers. I nodded in agreement. Understood. Then this is goodbye forever. Tears filled my eyes, but they were tears of relief and joy. Everything was coming to an end. I would never return to this house or to Mike again. My name is Kate, and I'm 32 years old. I work for a foreign company, though I'm currently on parental leave. Despite the official leave, I still handle work from home, so my workload hasn't changed much. My days are busy but fulfilling as I manage housework and work alone without Mike. I never imagined that life without Mike would feel more comfortable. I met Mike at a friend's wedding after-party shortly after breaking up with my previous boyfriend. Feeling lonely, I quickly grew close to Mike and married him just before turning 30. As the saying goes, love is blind. It wasn't until after the wedding that his issues with womanizing and drinking became clear. He would spend 2 to 3 nights a week drinking, even though he insisted it was within his limits. I couldn't accept his infidelity so soon after our wedding. I just wanted to enjoy the sweetness of married life. When I complained, Mike was indifferent. What are you talking about? Even when we were dating, I went out drinking and to clubs. You knew I loved drinking and that I'm popular with women. Mike is indeed popular with women. He's attentive, kind, and gives luxurious chocolates on birthdays. He listens sincerely to people's problems, whether they're men or women. His phone is constantly buzzing with messages from both genders, and he always retreats to his room to respond. I wish he would at least silence his phone during our time together. People often tell me how enviable my husband is and how happy I must be. Maybe I'm jealous, but I wish he would be kinder to me. His frequent drinking parties grew from a few times a week to almost every weekend. His phone was always filled with invitations, and though less frequent, there were also requests from women. Despite my confrontations and pleas for him to tone it down, he dismissed my concerns, saying the girls at the club were just being playful. His indifference made me almost give up. Even though he was often away, he did help around the house and was kind to me when he was home. This kindness somewhat balanced out my dissatisfaction with his behavior. When I became pregnant, I was excited and wanted to spend more time together. I eagerly told Mike about the baby, but his reaction was less than enthusiastic. Are you sure it's mine? He asked, his response far from the joy I expected. I was taken aback by his lack of happiness and the doubt in his voice. Mike, are you happy? I didn't expect to get pregnant so soon either, but I'm excited about the baby. I tried to mask my unease when I told him no, I didn't mean that. Of course I'm happy. Mike's response seemed to be an attempt to cover up his earlier comment. He assumed I wouldn't go out or get involved with other men, a notion I found troubling. Despite my doubts, I chose to view his reassurances positively, believing he trusted me to be serious and avoiding further confrontation. In the days that followed, Mike seemed to come to terms with my pregnancy. He became more attentive to my needs and supported me more eagerly with household chores. His help was invaluable, especially as I struggled with morning sickness. However, his nights out and drinking sessions continued unabated. This growing disconnect between us made me feel a rift in our relationship. I had read that women transition to motherhood as soon as they become pregnant, while men only become fathers after the child is born. Perhaps this was true for Mike as well. I optimistically hoped that once the baby arrived, he would naturally reduce his outings and focus more on our family. As my pregnancy progressed, I adjusted to remote work, creating a more comfortable work environment at home. With morning sickness subsiding, I resumed managing both housework and work. However, as my belly grew, my movements slowed, and I found it harder to keep up with everything. Mike used this as an excuse to go out even more frequently, saying he didn't want to burden me at home. Though it was easier for me to choose meals without his input, the situation felt different with a baby on the way. I wanted to have a serious conversation, but I avoided bringing up early marital issues and turned a blind eye to the traces of women's perfume and messages from women on his social media. Perhaps I was just convincing myself that it was harmless fun, trying to stay optimistic that my fun-loving husband would become a devoted father. In retrospect, Mike might have been mocking my lack of suspicion. He could have been messaging his affair partner right in front of me without me noticing. Then one day, the neighbor lady mentioned, "I saw your husband walking with a young woman recently. Do you have a sister-in-law?" I replied, "Yes, my husband has a sister, but she looked very young. I'm on good terms with her, and we often communicate via social media. We exchanged messages just yesterday, and she didn't mention meeting Mike." I realized with a jolt that I don't have any sisters or brothers. Is he cheating on me? I had always thought Mike was simply going out as usual, but a nagging doubt began to surface. What if he was pretending to socialize but was actually seeing another woman? This was the first time I had such suspicions, and I couldn't entirely dismiss the possibility. That night, I made several phone calls, but Mike came home late as usual. Suppressing my urge to question him, I said, "The baby could come any day now. I'd appreciate it if you could spend more time at home. My stomach has been feeling tight lately." I wanted him to be prepared for when labor started and, more importantly, to be there to support me. The thought of Mike, reeking of alcohol, being nearby during such a critical time filled me with embarrassment and distress. Mike responded quietly, "I understand," and went straight to the bathroom. He finished his bath quickly and headed to bed. We didn't get a chance to talk, and I sighed in frustration. Deciding to go to bed myself, I started walking down the corridor to the bedroom when I suddenly felt a warm liquid running down my leg. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, but then I realized my water had broken. I tried to wake Mike, who was deeply asleep from drinking, but he didn't stir. Half crying, I called a taxi and made my way to the hospital alone in the middle of the night. The next morning, I received a message from Mike, but I was too overwhelmed to respond. It wasn't until later that night, after successfully giving birth, that I managed to reply. "Congratulations, you did well. I have a sudden business trip starting tomorrow, so I can't come to see you. Sorry, can you ask your mother for help?" His words left me stunned. There was no trace of joy about the birth of his child, and I had hoped he would at least come to see me, even if it was late. Exhausted from childbirth and disheartened by Mike's response, I tried to find solace in looking at my sleeping daughter. My mother would be arriving soon to visit her newborn grandchild, and I planned to discuss everything with her. 4 days later, after my daughter Lily and I were discharged from the hospital, Mike's messages continued to be casual, likely due to his usual social activities. I asked my mother to pick us up and bring us home. As we arrived at the condominium, the concierge congratulated me on Lily's birth, and it was comforting to hear those words. But as I opened the door to our home, I was startled by the sound of a young woman's voice from inside. I nearly dropped Lily in my arms, and my mother looked just as shocked. Foreseeing a worsening situation, I handed Lily to my mother and asked her to wait at the entrance. With heavy steps, I walked down the hallway and called out, "I'm home." "Mike, what's going on?" "I don't even need to ask," I said, flinging open the bedroom door. Mike and his mistress were taken aback, their shock evident. "Why are you back? You were supposed to be discharged tomorrow," Mike exclaimed, trying to deflect. "What?" I sent numerous messages and called several times. "You turned off your phone and clearly enjoyed yourself," I retorted, the pain of seeing Mike with another woman hitting me hard. I had partly anticipated this scene after the neighbor's comment, but it was still gut-wrenching to witness. Feeling nauseous, I heard Mike speak coldly. "I have a girlfriend, so I'm heading home. Do whatever you want with the child." The young woman's laughter rang out. "Mike, you'll be with me, right?" she said with a dismissive tone. "Of course. There's no need to compare me to such an old woman. Besides, I don't want a baby. They're just noisy and not cute with their wrinkled faces." Her cruel words stung deeply, attacking both me and my baby, Lily. My body trembled with anger. but I took a deep breath to steady myself. I'm done with both of you. It's too late for regrets now. Summoning all the strength I could muster from my still recovering postpartum body, I glared at Mike. Are you really okay with this? It's fine for me and the child to disappear, right? I asked, needing him to confirm his intentions one last time. Yeah, look, Mike said. I've prepared the divorce papers and the birth certification. I've already signed them. So Kate, please fill them out and submit them. I nodded, responding, understood. Then this is goodbye forever. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of relief. Everything was finally ending. I would never return to this house or to Mike again. After that, Lily and I temporarily moved in with my mother. She reassured me, saying, consider it a homecoming after the birth. Don't worry about it, allowing me to rely on her comfortably. Financially, I had no concerns. I was receiving a steady paycheck from my company and was in a position to take a proper maternity leave. According to my mother, my father would soon come to visit Lily. My parents typically live in France and only stay in this house when they have business in Japan. Gradually, I was getting used to taking care of Lily and began to physically recover. It was time to proceed with the divorce proceedings. In truth, I had already been preparing for this, moving my belongings out gradually before giving birth. So there wasn't much left to do. I had consulted with a lawyer several times to ensure my position was secure, and I was timing my contact with Mike. When he finally called, his confusion was palpable. What's this? I was told to leave the house, he said. Of course, I responded calmly. That house is property of the company I work for. If I'm not living there, it's only natural for you to leave. I work for a foreign real estate company, Mike said. I didn't know it was your company's property. We looked at several apartments with a real estate agent, but he must not have realized it was connected to your company. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear, I explained. The property is owned by our company, so it was cheaper for me to rent. Normally, the rent for that place would be over $1,300 a month. I heard a surprised gasp from Mike's end. $1,300. That's a lie, he almost screeched. It's no lie, I said. As an employee, I only paid $1,100 a month, including utilities, which was automatically deducted from my paycheck. But now that has stopped. What are you talking about? Came a voice that clearly belonged to his mistress. It seemed she had assumed Mike was covering all the rent and expenses. She must have been shocked to learn that their current lifestyle was dependent on me. Wait a minute, Mike said. If I had to pay that much in rent, my salary won't be enough. That's right, I replied. I forgot to mention that I'm also storing the belongings you left behind. You owe $3,300 for storage. If you don't retrieve them soon, additional charges will apply, and you'll have to keep paying until everything is moved out. I wondered if Mike had always been so petty. I felt a pang of disheartenment. I had only packed clothes and essentials for Lily and me, but I couldn't move all the larger items and furniture. All right, I'll be there soon, I said, and hung up. After explaining the situation to my mother, we decided to head to my previous residence. Though it was inconvenient, my mother and Lily came with me. After contacting the lawyer and coordinating with several parties, we set off from my mother's house. It took us several minutes to reach the old house. I pressed the intercom, and an irritated Mike answered, already? Come in quickly. When my mother and I entered, the state of the house was appalling. Though I wasn't the best at tidying up, I had cleaned thoroughly in preparation for the baby. In just 1 month, it had deteriorated into a complete mess. Empty beer cans, plastic bottles, takeout containers, and various bags overflowed from the trash can. Despite having a dishwasher, dirty dishes were piled up in the sink. I'm not great at cleaning, but I did my best, I said coldly. Mike's suggestion that I should return was ridiculous. I'm not the one who left. You were told to leave. The lawyer and movers arrived shortly after. Thank you for coming, I said. Movers, please remove most of the appliances. Most of the electronics in this house were purchased by me. Mike only had old items from his student days, which I gradually replaced. Mike panicked as he watched the appliances being removed. What the hell? How am I supposed to live now? The mistress emerged from the back room, yawning and glancing around as if she had just woken up. Actually, most of the things in this house were bought by me, I told her. Mike only covered living expenses. The appliances and other costs were all from my own pocket. In other words, they belong to me. You two will need to buy your own from now on. I smiled at the mistress. The lawyer will explain everything in detail, but I will be claiming alimony from both Mike and you. If I secure custody of our child, there will be no division of assets. I'll leave the balance of our joint account to Mike. Mike and his mistress exchanged a hopeful glance, but their smiles faded as the lawyer began speaking. I will be claiming $200,000 from Mike and $67,000 from Jane, the lawyer said. This is in addition to the child support claim. The usage fees for the appliances Kate mentioned will be offset against these claims. Their faces went pale as they listened. I added, also, you're behind on rent and utilities, right? Expect an eviction notice soon. Water, electricity, and gas might be cut off too. And of course, you'll need to cover your own moving expenses. The sudden realization of paying alimony and approximately $3,000 in rent and utilities visibly shocked them. They began arguing about who would cover the costs. Shortly after I began suspecting my husband's affair, I hired a detective agency to investigate his actions. It was an incredibly difficult time, especially being pregnant. The shock hit me hard, and I even thought it might have caused my water to break. I didn't have the time or energy to investigate myself, but I couldn't remain passive. During my hospital stay after giving birth, I called the concierge of our apartment building to inquire about Mike. They reluctantly confirmed seeing him return home with another woman several times. Next, I requested my company to review the security camera footage, which clearly showed Mike and the woman entering the elevator together. Additionally, the detective agency had obtained photos of them entering a hotel. Their escape routes were sealed. I was simply waiting for the right moment to confront Mike. When I returned with Lily and saw them blatantly together, I knew it was time to take decisive action. My belongings were being moved out one by one, while Mike and his mistress argued loudly. Lily, my mother, and I sat on the sofa, which was scheduled to be moved out last. Suddenly, the door burst open and a large figure collided with Mike, sending him sprawling across the room. Shocked, we watched as the large man threw Mike across the room again. "What's going on?" Mike shouted as he struggled to get up, only to be met with a loud reprimand from the large man. It was my father, followed by my brother. Both were tall and robust, resembling bears. My biological father had died in an accident shortly after I was born. My mother, who had been involved in the family real estate business, met my current father, a French man, during a business trip to France. They married when I was in middle school. My father, a former football player, is a large and passionate man. Though it took me a while to warm up to him as a child, it was clear he deeply loved my mother, so I wholeheartedly supported their marriage. My half-brother Mark, who usually lives in France, had come with my father. I hadn't seen him since I got married, so this unexpected reunion was a pleasant surprise. Watching my father and brother scold Mike angrily in French was a sight to behold. Mike looked visibly frightened, sweating and pale, though he likely didn't understand the French words being hurled at him. The mistress, attempting to sneak out of the house, was caught by my mother and brought back. Mike tried to speak, but my father and Mark drowned him out with their shouting. Then my in-laws arrived. I had contacted them earlier, and they had been eagerly anticipating meeting Lily. Learning about their son's actions for the first time, they were furious. The joy of meeting their grandchild was overshadowed by their disappointment in Mike's behavior. "Mike, what are you doing?" my father-in-law demanded, pushing Mike's head to the floor. "We were looking forward to meeting our grandchild, and here you are, living with an affair partner. We are so disappointed in you." My mother-in-law looked as though she might collapse from shock. I felt a sense of accomplishment. "Mike, it's okay now. I have Lily, and she gives me hope and a future. Just make sure you pay the alimony and child support. You can stay in this house if you can cover the rent." The shock of discovering the affair had been overwhelming, both mentally and physically, but now things were different. I had a child to protect, and I decided it was time to let go of my hatred and anger. It wasn't something I wanted to show Lily. Having said what I needed to, and with my father and Mark having dealt with Mike, I resolved to move on. Sensing my resolve, my father and Mark supported me as we left the apartment with Lily and my mother. Eventually, I learned that Mike had to move out of the luxury apartment and now lived in a regular one. The mistress left him, apparently only interested in the luxury lifestyle. When Mike asked her to move with him to a more modest apartment, she reportedly said, "If you don't have money, our relationship is over, and left. It seemed her interests had been entirely dependent on his wealth. I received apology letters from her parents, and I told them that as long as the alimony was paid, the matter would be considered closed. Though they expressed their gratitude, I never received a direct apology from the mistress herself. This only reinforced my criticism of the younger generation's attitudes. Mike's behavior at work changed drastically. Once popular and always surrounded by colleagues, he now found himself isolated, with no one approaching him for advice. Even if he were invited out for drinks, his financial obligations for alimony and child support likely left him no room for leisure. Having lived freely and carelessly before, he now had to work diligently to meet his responsibilities. I decided to move to France with Lily. Though staying in Japan at my mother's house would have been fine, my father invited us to France. I can work remotely, and Lily can grow up in a natural and enriching environment, picking up French and experiencing a wide range of opportunities. As for me, I plan to refresh myself physically and mentally at my father's house while carefully considering my future. I look forward to enjoying another day at the park with Lily.